The Nigerian government's budget deficit has surged to a concerning 7.5% of GDP, reflecting a significant gap between revenue and expenditure. This alarming trend has raised concerns about the country's long-term economic stability. Now in this discussion, we'll delve into the factors contributing to this widening deficit, the implications for the economy, and potential solutions to address this pressing issue. Well, joining me for this, I have Dr. Samson Simon, Chief Economist, ARKK Economics Data Limited. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
Good morning to you too. Well, how concerning is a budget deficit, to GDP ratio of 7.5%, especially when you look at global or African average? How concerning is this for Nigeria?
It is indeed concerning. We have what we call the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and it's being stated that the deficit should not exceed 3%. It's for a reason. We want to have responsible budgeting. We want to make sure that we have fiscal space to get things done. Sadly, with this, the fiscal deficits have doubled the intended number. When the budget was passed, the federal government projected the budget of $28.9 trillion, and the revenue was 19.5. So the deficit was supposed to be 9.2 trillion naira, and the deficit was at 3.8%. But with the new development, it's clearly showing that the deficit has doubled from what they projected. That's not good news to the Nigerian authorities. It means less fiscal space for the government to get things done, and it means that we're accumulating debt that will be a problem for us down the line. And mind you, because of the spending, is outstripping revenue. Most of the spending is going to recurrent expenditure. So it's not actually good news because we are badly underperforming when it comes to the capital budget. So that's not good news, and that's disturbing. And I think something needs to be done urgently to resolve the issue. And what can it be done? You need to increase revenue. You have to find ways to reduce spending. And now with this new minimum wage, sadly, things are not going to get better. They are likely going to get worse.
Well, I think you just answered my second question, but I'll ask you anyway, because we're seeing two issues here. The government challenging enhancing its revenue generation efforts and also its reliance on borrowing to finance the green expenditure. I mean, I'd like you to talk us through the optics. I mean, what's the optics like for you? And just like you also added, the anticipated new minimum wage payment and all of those. I mean, looking at all of this, what do you see, and how can the country, move away from this and get into a better fiscal space?
Well, the current government seems determined to resolve the problem, and that was why they set up the Taiwo Ayodele Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee. Sadly, the legislation is meeting some headwinds. We fervently hope that the problem will quickly be resolved, and we'll find ways to increase revenue. And for the authorities, they need to really reprioritize the budget. If you cannot do everything that you wanted to do, then there is a way for you to put things that you consider very important first. And then the supplementary budget of 6.2 trillion too is not helping matters. So we need to set our priorities right, and we have to find ways to generate more revenue without necessarily increasing the tax rate, or making Nigerians or taxing poverty or productivity. So there are a lot of ways that we can get this done. So meanwhile, the revenue, if you look at it, compared for the first half of this year compared to the first half of last year, it has increased by a third. But the reality is that it's still underperforming by 2/3 of what they had projected. So everything needs to be done. The authorities need to find ways to generate revenue, whether domestically or internationally. Crude oil production is also underperforming. They should find ways to solve the problem. It's mainly around insecurity, so it's within the purview of the government. If they are really determined to fix the problem, I think they can fix the problem. But I think there's a lack of political will to actually tackle insecurity in Nigeria, even for aspects of insecurity that really affect the coffers of the state, talking about insecurity in the oil-producing areas of Nigeria.
Well, beyond taxes, really, does it seem to you like the government is really doing a lot to, ensure that its revenue is increased? I mean, because you just talked about it, your daily, team. It's fiscal policy and taxes at the end of the day.
Well, it's not limited to revenue. I know taxes are important. That's the mainstay of any government spending anywhere in the world. But we also have the mainstay for the Nigerian economy has been oil for a long run until Muhammadu Buhari became president, and it has been challenging for the government to even keep up with the OPEC quota. We have largely been underproducing to the extent that OPEC decided to review downwards the quota that they have been giving us because we have failed woefully for many years to meet up. Though we resisted that. But even with the resistance, we have failed up to now, have not resolved the issues. So for taxation, we need better tax administration. And I think the reforms look reasonable, and they should be able to give us what we are looking for. We should have desired results at the end of the day. But the major problem in this country has always been implementation. Even for the subsidy removal, we said that it will free up resources to tackle more pressing issues like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. We have largely removed it, and we have not seen anything better. So in the same manner for the tax reforms, there are good policies, but what about the implementation? We have to be conscious of that because that's where we always tend to have the problems. So how shall we that this will be different from others? So there's a need of work that needs to be done. We need results, and urgently too, because Nigeria is technically on the fiscal cliff. And if nothing is done, things will likely go southwards. And everything must be done to arrest the problem.
Right. Let me take you back to something you said earlier. So on the one hand, when we do a review of the fiscal indicators for the first half of 2024, we're going to see a litany of underperformance, which you also alluded to. Beg your pardon. For example, the federal government only met 37.9% of its revenue target, and their recurrent expenditure was exceeded. The target was exceeded. Now, spending on the capital account also continued to underperform. And then, on the other hand, finally, the overall fiscal deficit exceeded budget projections by over 85%. Now, taking a look at all of this, does it give you the sense that, maybe the government's projections were probably faulty and maybe over-ambitious initially, ab initio?
It's more than clear, the overestimated things. We have this problem. We tend to overestimate our ability to get results. I think we need to come down to earth. We need to make sure that whatever we're projecting for the year is as close to reality as possible.
But let me come in here. Let me come in here, Doctor. Is there a chance that, it was just maybe some global or domestic headwinds that sort of swayed, the government away from achieving some of these projections? Or do you think the projections in themselves are faulty?
The projections themselves, we tend to be over-optimistic when we're making projections, and we don't seem to learn lessons. Though this is a new government, this is the first budget that they're the ones drafting, because for last year, they inherited it from the last government. So maybe they are over-anxious to get results, to get things done, and this is arguably the biggest budget in nominal terms. So I think they overestimated a lot of things. It's largely on our part. There's nothing global that has really affected the budget. It's basically domestic, and it's because we tend to be over-optimistic about things, about the revenue expected. That's the main reason where we had this problem.
Well, going back to the deficit, do you see this narrowing anytime soon, considering efforts to enhance revenue generation?
The deficits are unlikely to be narrowed soon, maybe in the medium term, when these reforms come into effect and they are well suppressed and they're properly implemented. In the medium term, we should see results where the political will is there. But in the meantime, I don't see the deficits coming down because we're talking about new minimum wage. We're also talking about the revenue being a challenge. We still have not tackled the issues around the oil production, export of crude oil. So there are a lot of challenges on the horizon. So the possibility of these deficits reducing are very slim.
Okay. Well, looking at all of this, I mean, these fiscal indicators that we've been talking about, what impact do you see them having on price stability and monetary policy decisions moving forward?
Of course, the fiscal authorities are working at cross purpose with the monetary authorities. Why am I saying so? The monetary authorities are embarking on contractionary monetary policy. But for the fiscal authorities, they are embarking on expansionary monetary policy. And that's one of the main reasons why we are failed woefully at tackling inflation. And unless they work in consonance, this problem will likely persist. And that's why whatever the monetary authorities do, the fiscal policies tend to cancel that out. So that's largely has been the case. And unless they work together, we may largely be seeing an exercise in futility.
Well, how do you expect this balance to be struck here? Because for the monetary authority, a good number of the things they are doing are not necessarily good for business, for production, because at the end of the day, you know, that's like the opportunity for God, if I can use that word. And on the other hand, the fiscal policy is trying to ameliorate to ensure that, okay, I mean, the impact, the pressure is not too much on production, on businesses. So if you're saying they are, you know, they are far apart, and you're looking forward to some form of consonance or some form of, you know, balance between both of them, how can we achieve it, and what will be the impact on production, on output, and, you know, every other thing, really?
As long as they work at cross purposes, the policies will fail, either on the fiscal side or the monetary side. I know that it is about setting your priorities right. When you hike interest rates, when you're trying to tackle inflation, the cost of credit will go up, and that may affect production. But for any authority anywhere in the world, if you have to tackle the problem of high inflation and then the cost of credit being low, they always prioritize price stability. So it's a temporary measure. When price stability is achieved now, right, then you can stimulate businesses. But always when there is a clash, because they tend to work, they tend to cancel out, you have to put price stability as your number one priority. Then when that is tackled, then you have all the strength and your focus can be on production. Because even when you're trying to tackle inflation, you're not only protecting the purchasing power of the consumer, you're also protecting the purchasing power of the producer. So you're not doing only consumers a favor, you're also doing producers a favor, because many businesses are folded because of high inflation. So that should be the priority for any authority, whether the fiscal side or the monetary side. Then when prices are on target, when inflation is on target, then we can stimulate growth. But for now, the priority should be tackling inflation.
I'm just wondering what business owners will say to you right now. I'm sure you don't want to get into that debate with them.
They're entitled to their opinion, but that's the reality. We need to ensure price stability. We need to bring down inflation. Is completely out of hand, and everything must be done. And if we don't tackle inflation, even the growth we're experiencing will be undermined. So it's not worth it. Everything must be done to bring price to target. It's very important, and it solves everybody's interest, including businesses. I know they are swallowing the bitter pills of high cost of credit, but what is cheap credit if you cannot make the projections? You cannot
so, Doctor, let me come in here. If we are to continue with this price targeting, you know, mandate of the CBN, for how long do you think we're going to, you know, probably achieve a 21%? And does that mean businesses, consumers are going to have to wait that long?
The thing is that it should not be jammed tomorrow. People should not be deceived that prices are going to come down when so far we have not seen results. It's very important that we do the right things. And if you look at our inflation, it's mainly within, the problem is around food inflation, which is not within the purview of the central bank, right? It's supposed to be the fiscal side to ensure the sufficient supply of food. So the fiscal side has not been doing much. It's not like they have not done anything, but they have not done a single thing that actually moves the needle, and that's why food security has been a challenge. So if you can tackle food insecurity, if you can tackle a problem around oil production, then we may likely see prices improving, and we may be on target. Even 6 to 9% target that is the official target for the Nigerian authorities. But with the way things are now, the possibility of having that anytime soon is also very slim.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Samson Simon, Chief Economist, ARKK Economics and Data Limited, for your time and thoughts on the show today.
Thank you for having me.